Ugh, I never wanted to go home for the holidays. My older sister exclaimed, slamming the table and standing up with such vigor. I had never seen Diane look so fierce and imposing, almost like a wrathful deity. It was so frightening, it felt like it could haunt my dreams. That New Year's remains an unforgettable turning point in my life. My name is Kathy. Just the other day, my daughter asked me, "Why do you bother saying hello to telemarketers, Mom? It's just a sales pitch. And they can't even see you anyway." I let her know that it's just good manners. To be grateful and considerate, no matter the circumstances. But she just said, and brushed it off, slightly breaking my heart. You'll understand when you start working. Today, I want to share a story that happened to me 5 years ago. I'd really like you to hear it. At that time, I was a hard-working career woman at a foreign company in New York. However, a phone call changed my life drastically. My mom, who raised my older sister, Diane, and me as a single mom, had broken her leg and was hospitalized. Living in New York, neither Diane nor I were at our family home anymore. Since Mom was hospitalized, one of us had to go back to the countryside. Diane, who ran a law firm, couldn't leave her responsibilities. I had important roles too, but I was more replaceable. So, I took it upon myself to take a leave of absence and return to the countryside. But right before I was set to leave, my company told me that if my leave became long-term, I would have to step down from my position and be reassigned to a different department upon return. Essentially, they indicated that they did not need someone who would be absent. As a single woman at the time, even before announcing my leave, I felt pressured as if they expected me to eventually leave due to marriage and childbirth. While society now better understands women's roles at work, back then, despite the company's outward rhetoric, the underlying belief was that women are likely to take leaves, so we don't want to keep them in leadership positions. Few understood, and I often felt envied by some male colleagues, because I held a higher position than they did. This demotion seemed easily imagined as someone complaining that you can't rely on someone who takes leave, and it's hard to back them up when they return. If only the duration of my leave had been clear. Depending on my mom's rehabilitation progress, she might need support even after her discharge. She couldn't drive, meaning someone needed to assist her with hospital visits and shopping. It was clear my leave would not be short. With no set end date, and no return to my previous position in sight, the situation was increasingly uncomfortable. That's when I decided to resign. I moved out of my apartment and committed to supporting my mom full-time. If it helps Mom recover, it's worth it. But when I first saw her at the hospital, I somewhat regretted coming back. Her first words were, "You hardly ever show your face, but now you come because of this." Admittedly, I hadn't been able to visit home often due to work, especially after promotions in my 30s that made visits rare. But to say such things to a daughter who had quit her job to return felt unfair. Mom was likely stressed from her injury and unfamiliar hospital life, so I let it slide at the time. However, her snide remarks continued with each visit. Once discharged, the minor jabs turned into outright verbal abuse. Struggling with mobility in a non-barrier-free home, she often lashed out. I was assisting her with everything, but once when I was momentarily in the bathroom, she hurled the remote at me for being slow. I wondered if it was something urgent, but it turned out she just wanted some tea. Honestly, I thought all this anger over just that. But right now, I am acting as my mom's hands and feet, helping around the house. The one who can't move freely and is suffering the most must be my mom. I thought this was a time to quietly endure and support her, so I resolved to be patient. However, my mom not only trampled over my consideration, but it felt like she stomped on it and then jumped on it repeatedly with great force. Mom would frequently get angry and throw things, aiming for my face with remotes and phones. It's a wonder my reflexes hadn't sharpened from dodging objects, almost as if I could evade arrows like the legendary warrior. Her reasons were often unreasonable: "You're late, your touch is too strong during care. You made a face for a moment." Honestly, I wasn't doing those things. My care was careful but firm enough to support her. To avoid complaints about being late, I began holding off on bathroom breaks. And I hurried through baths with astonishing speed. I wasn't too happy with how my face looked, and with everything going on, it wouldn't be weird if I appeared upset. But I tried to keep a smile on, even when she said I looked like I was frowning, which I didn't think was true. Eventually, her verbal abuse extended beyond care-related issues. "You're useless, you'll never get rehired. How long do you plan to stay in our house? Why did you quit? If you were working, you could have renovated the house to make it easier for me to live in." Day by day, I faced her anger. The gratitude I had for the mom who raised me alone was dwindling to ashes. I hadn't wanted to quit. I had tried to take a leave, but it hadn't been approved. I had many things I still wanted to do, but I had convinced myself that if I could devote plenty of time for the mom who raised me alone, it was for the best. Come to think of it, Diane hasn't visited home much either. She didn't even come to visit this time. And yet, why do I, who quit my job to come back, have to endure being spoken to like this? My mom has always favored Diane, who became a lawyer. This is because, in the past, our relatives harshly criticized her for raising children alone, questioning whether she could really raise us to be decent people. My dad had an affair and left home while my mom was pregnant with me. The marriage between my dad and mom wasn't well received by those around them to begin with, and upon learning of the divorce, my grandma hysterically scolded my mom, saying, "I told you so." Furthermore, she forcefully arranged a marriage meeting for my mom with a much older man, arguing that my mom could remarry while she was still young, as it would be impossible for her to live alone. Of course, my mom furiously refused such a marriage, and my grandma tried to prevent her from staying single by involving other relatives. As a result, this incident led to a severance of ties between my grandma and my mom. My mom was really eager for Diane and me to be the perfect daughters. I was always getting scolded as a kid if things didn't turn out how she wanted. She never complimented me for getting good grades, but she would get upset if I didn't do well. Often as a child, I felt like taunting her, asking, "Did you always score so high when you were a kid?" I had such rebellious thoughts. But Diane was the exemplary student my mom wanted. Thus, Diane became a lawyer. As soon as she did, my mom, who had cut ties with my grandma and other relatives, started contacting them to brag about Diane. Needless to say, this made us somewhat unpopular among the relatives. I wasn't a foolish child either. I did well in school and landed a job at a respectable company, but to my mom, the lawyer title Diane held was significant. I was always compared to her and treated as the lesser child. However, it wasn't as if she threw things or hurled abuse like she did with me. Diane seemed to be treated more kindly. Or so it appeared, and her behavior was also more gentle. The stress of the injury and the considerable support my mom received from the nurses at the hospital, who attended to her every need, seemed to have created an expectation in her mind that it was normal for everyone to comply with her demands. A friend mentioned that people can develop mental health issues after being discharged, similar to what was happening with Kathy's mom. I attempted to take her to a psychiatrist, but, as expected, she lashed out. I persisted and finally managed to take her, but the results showed no issues. It couldn't be true, could it? Surely there must be some diagnosis. But it turned out that my mom's transformation wasn't due to any illness. It appeared to be just plain selfishness. As I was running out of options, her verbal abuse worsened, and I faced my first New Year's since resigning with her taunting, "See, I told you I wasn't sick. You're trying to make me out to be ill." This year, Diane said she'd come home because she was worried about our situation. And for the first time in a long time, the three of us gathered. But there was no festive atmosphere of a family enjoying finger food together. Instead, I served while Diane was treated like a guest. And the new year was anything but relaxed. "Kathy, serve some drinks to me and your sister." Maybe for Diane, but Mom, you shouldn't drink with your legs still unstable. What if you fall? Shut up. Have you finally started talking back to your mom? That's not what You call me a sick person and show me no kindness despite my disability. You don't contribute at all, just living off what we have. Excuse me, how could you say that? Quiet. 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 I don't need a failure like you in my house. I thought I finally had someone to boast about to the relatives. But then you became unemployed. Get out of here now. With those words, my mom threw the cracker that was on the dining table. At that moment, I finally understood the true meaning of her words. I thought she was just selfishly lashing out at me because I rarely came home. But that wasn't it. No matter how caring I was, my mom was cold to me because I had deviated from her ideal image of a daughter. She wanted us to remain elite, hard-working daughters living in New York. But what was I supposed to do in response? Abandon our injured mom together as sisters? Or should I have commuted by bullet train to support her? Cling to my current company despite knowing there's no place for me after returning? It's my life. Am I really obligated to meet such expectations? Something inside me had always been taut like a string. And it felt like it had just snapped. Enough. Understood. Then it's goodbye forever. The moment I glared at my mom and shouted that, it was then. Ugh, I never wanted to come home for the holidays. With that, Diane slammed the table and got up quickly. What? My mom was taken aback by the sudden outburst. Normally, Diane is the calmest and most composed person in our house. I had never seen her angry. I nearly questioned if it was actually her who said that. But Diane was biting her lip, trying to keep her anger in check. That look on her face, those were definitely words from Diane. If you had just kept quiet. What is this? It's understandable to have me bring the meals since Mom's legs are bad. But constantly telling me to do the laundry or go shopping. And then to remake the tea because it's lukewarm? Kathy barely has a moment to eat. I thought it was strange how much thinner Kathy looked compared to the last time I saw her. And on top of that, calling her a parasite and a failure. Do you not understand why Kathy quit the job she loved to come back here? Diane finished her rant in one breath, panting heavily. Oh, Diane, it's not like that. This child even took me to a psychiatrist. Doubting me, she's just a terrible daughter. It's normal to think there might be a mental issue if you're screamed at every day for such crazy reasons. If it's painful, at least try to limit your whims. You're pushing your ideals on Kathy too much. No, but, I don't think she needed to quit her job. Then could you have lived alone, Mom? Even now you barely move on your own? No. Because that leg of yours is practically healed, right? What? Both my mom and I were shocked by Diane's revelation. Earlier, you walked a few steps without your cane when it rolled away. I had to laugh when you hurriedly yelled at Kathy to get it for you. It's not like that. I didn't realize. My mom was desperately trying to explain herself, but honestly, I was too exhausted to do anything but think, really? I hadn't noticed at all. Oh, this is truly shocking. Give me back the months I've spent, Mother. Knowing now that her leg was healed. The mom who I thought needed my kindness suddenly seemed despicable. Why are you so cold to Mom? Diane was always the perfect daughter, my pride and joy. Because, Mom, ever since I became a lawyer, you've just been after my money. Kindness also fades away. What? Once again, I was taken aback by Diane's words. Mother looked pale, well, practically white by now. From the way you're acting. Kathy hasn't been hit with this. I've been hit up for money almost immediately after becoming a lawyer because it's hard to live alone, and all that. Was that also why you hardly came home? That's part of it. I also just didn't like Mom anymore and found it bothersome. Diane answered nonchalantly, causing our mom to exclaim in shock. Hate. Diane, that's terrible. Huh? Which is worse? You only love my money. It's not like that. What's different? I know. You're begging for funds, and that injury? It's all due to your gambling problem. Huh? Diane, what do you mean? My head couldn't keep up with further revelations from Diane. The first call about Mom's accident came to me, right? Yes. They told me Mom had collapsed at a casino, tripped over some slot coin, and banged her knee hard. What? Let me make it clearer. The money she squeezed from me was used for gambling because she was short on living expenses. And the injury happened at a casino. She's a full-blown gambling addict. Wow. Our mom shrank under our disapproving gazes, hitting the mark. The last time I talked to Mom, I said I'm not giving you any more money. This time she must have been counting on Kathy. But that fell through when Kathy quit her job, right? That wasn't my intention. As Diane spoke, tears began to well up in our mom's eyes. So, basically, Mom wanted me to stay as the convenient daughter who works at a reputable company to not embarrass her in front of relatives, and as her personal wallet. But since I resigned, you don't need such a daughter anymore. As I glared at her, my mom awkwardly looked away. After milking Diane for money and she wasn't too fond of you, you turned to me? Don't you underestimate your daughters too much? Shut up. I raised you both just fine. So I should get to have a little fun with gambling as I get older. Just a little is fine. But gambling to the point of borrowing money from others is not okay. As we became respectable, Mom, you've just gone downhill. At my words, Diane burst out laughing. Really not a cute kid, huh? Has always been. Could it be that I take after my mom? But honestly, who can still be a nice daughter after facing this much ridicule? I'm not that delusional. That's true. Diane agreed with me, nodding emphatically. Rather, I should be thankful that such sensible daughters could come from such a mom. If I have to listen to you, that's it. I'm cutting ties with you. Huh? For real? Yay! I spontaneously cheered and went for a high five with Diane. What a welcome offer! No more living under Mom's wrath. And I can even look for a job. Oh, and if you have any troubles, don't involve me anymore. What? Mom started to panic at my words. Huh? What's that reaction? You're the one who said cutting ties. You don't say that and then expect help when in trouble. But, we're family, we should support each other. That's why, if we're cutting ties, it means the family bond is severed, right? You just said cutting ties, Mom. And you mentioned support. But all the support has been coming from us. I get it. My bad. I take it back. I can't believe I'd be alone in this house. Ah, that's right. Diane. You'll stay, won't you? No, I won't. Diane decisively cut off our mom, who was almost clinging to her. They say money issues can end relationships. And I don't want to lend money to Mom anymore. Dealing with a gambling addict is just too troublesome. Trust the elite lawyer to have seen all sorts of situations. It's probably an occupational hazard by now. At my jest, Diane laughed heartily. Our sisterly reunion turned out to be quite dramatic. But it seems our closeness will continue as ever. Aren't you homeless if you leave here? You probably want to move out today. Yeah, well, I can't exactly get a house contract right away. Maybe I'll go to a hotel. You could come to my place. Huh, really? Diane. Would a sister refuse to live with her sibling? Well, maybe some would. Which is it? I wouldn't mind. It sounds fun. Let's enjoy our single lives together. As we continued our conversation with laughter, Mom approached us trembling. Please don't take my words seriously, could you reconsider? With tears in her eyes, she pleaded. I refuse. It was perhaps the only time Diane and I were ever so united in our resolve. Afterward, I quickly left the family home and stayed at Diane's place until I found a job. Diane said, You must have had a tough time at home. I'm sorry for leaving everything to you even though I was busy. And didn't even charge me rent. I felt a bit guilty, so I did the housework. Otherwise, I might truly become the parasite Mom mentioned. After living modestly with Diane for a while, I found a job and we each began living separately again. It's like getting back to normal life. Mom wrote to us over and over asking for support, but we both chose not to answer. We had enough reasons to give up on her. It was her own doing. In truth, Mom's legs are fine now. And she even took a part-time job claiming she was out of money. Though it seems she was fired soon after for poor attendance. She kept going gambling during breaks and didn't return on time, which led to her dismissal. She repeated this behavior at the next job too. With her age, it's hard to find re-employment. And she's living in poverty, unable to quit gambling. Maybe she thinks gambling won't betray her like her daughters did. But that's not my concern anymore. It's been 15 years since then. Mom has finally quit gambling. More because she ran out of funds than by choice, and ended up deep in debt. I was surrounded by some tough-looking guys saying I had a duty to repay her debts. But thanks to my lawyer sister, we managed to get through without issue. I wouldn't have known what to do on my own. Probably would have ended up paying just because they said so. Really saved me. We still don't talk to Mom, and I doubt that will ever change. I don't want it to. Diane has already considered legal actions. Planning for the worst, ready to cut ties formally if needed. By the way, Diane later married a fellow lawyer. They often argue about work directions, but she seems to enjoy it like a debate club. A marriage among the wealthy is like a whole new level, isn't it? I, on the other hand, ended up marrying someone from an advertising agency I met through work in IT. Completely unrelated to my previous job. Honestly, we don't earn much. Maybe I earned more in my previous job? But we have more holidays. And I can spend plenty of time with my husband and daughter. I help her with cooking lessons on holidays and, embarrassingly, go on dates with my husband. It's fulfilling. Happy despite not earning much? Of course. Money is necessary. But it doesn't alone bring happiness. Otherwise, a mom, who could spend freely even in debt, would surely be happy now. What's important isn't money, academic background, or career. I've learned from my relationship with my parents that none of that has any real value. What truly matters is whether there are relationships around you where hearts connect. Even if you have money, if you can't be your true self around those people, it's suffocating, right? It's the same thing. I may not be enjoying a lavish lifestyle in a high-end apartment, eating fancy foods every day, but I have a teenage daughter who loves to cook alongside me, a husband who still compliments my haircuts, and coworkers I trust completely. I can proudly say I'm the happiest person ever.